What is up, dreamers, and welcome to the Audacity to Heal podcast. I am your host, Murletta Jammer, and you might know me in these digital streets as the professional dreamer. If you're joining for the very first time, this isn't just any podcast. This, my friend, is a place where dreams meet reality, where stories of healing take center stage, and where every moment is a celebration of the audacity it takes to heal. Life has a way of throwing us curveballs, and trust me, your girl has navigated some unexpected turns herself. But through it all, it has unearthed a resilience in me that I truly didn't know that I had. For me, my journey became a canvas painted with those twists and turns, and what led to an even deeper connection to my faith. I've come to understand that healing and renewal aren't just words, nor are they a linear path. Healing isn't about the destination, but it is everything to do with the journey. I look forward to sharing my journey, intimately, authentically, and yes, sometimes hilariously. So whether you're tuning in on your morning commute, joining us live, or discovering us in the wee hours of the night, I want you to know that healing is an art, and you are a masterpiece in the making. With that said, there will be tears, lots of laughter, wisdom, and a whole lot of healing. This, my friend, is the Audacity to Heal, where we are audacious enough to believe in healing, boldly standing in our truths, and unapologetically pursuing the life we deserve. So, if you're ready, I'm honored to have you aboard this incredibly audacious ride. Tash Haynes, an inspiring storyteller, photographer, entrepreneur, author of a children's book, philanthropist, world traveler, and the list goes on. Tash has built an incredible community and platform around faith, family, and resilience. Many of you may know Tash from her vibrant online presence, but today we're going to unpack the deeper layers of her journey, how she's navigated the unexpected twists of life, leaned into her faith, and used her voice and her many gifts to empower others to keep healing forward. Tasha's life could easily be summed up by the names of her three daughters, Wisdom, Courage, and Glory. Over the years, Tash has managed to juggle motherhood, her faith, world travels, all while building a thriving business alongside her amazing husband, Isaiah. As God would have it, through every season, she has gained a wealth of wisdom, shown courage at every turn, and reflected God's glory with every new chapter. If you've ever felt stuck in your healing, or if you just don't know where your next step is right now, this episode is for you. Tasha's story of resilience, wisdom, and transparency will inspire you to embrace your journey wherever you are. So grab your coffee or drink of pleasure, get comfy, and let's dive in. The next episode of the Audacity to Heal podcast starts right now. What is up, dreamers, and welcome to the Audacity to Heal podcast. I am your host, Marletta Jammer, also known in these digital streets as the professional dreamer, and I am just honored and beyond elated to have this opportunity to look. I've already told her I've been over here fangirling. I've been following Tash forever. And so this is so exciting to me to have this honor and privilege to speak with her, to have this candid conversation about healing forward on tonight. If you all would do me a favor in the comments, if you're listening, be sure that you leave a comment welcoming my guest, Tash Haynes, to the Audacity to Heal podcast.
I'm so honored to be here. I'm so excited. I'm so excited. Thank you for having me. Thank you so
are
much.
so welcome. Tash, look, we've already had a mini episode before the show even got started because we were just chopping it up. And I do not believe in delaying conversation when we do things like these podcasts because I value people's time. I value Tasha's time. Y'all heard her. She does everything. But I'm going to let her introduce herself to you. So Tash, introduce yourself to the audience. Share about
who you are, where you're from. Shout out your people because I know her community is watching.
Oh my goodness. Well, my name is Tosh, as she said. I live in Seattle, Washington. I always struggle with introductions because a couple years ago I decided not to define myself by what I do, but I feel like
Okay.
so many of the times when we're introducing ourselves, we're like bucket listing our accolades. So for the purposes of this podcast, I'm a photographer. I'm a content creator. I'm an entrepreneur of the last 16 years. I'm a mother of three girls, my oldest Wisdom, my middle Courage, my baby Glory. I am a heart failure survivor. I am a wife of almost 20 years. And I'm a sister. That's a new role. I'm a daughter. And most importantly, I'm a daughter of the king. And
Come on
so
now.
that is who I am. I'm learning so much about life and I love to I mean, you said it all. You said it all. It was all in the intro. It was
And we're
all in
going to dig in.
the
We
intro.
are going to dig in because I told her before we started, I'm going through as I was preparing, I'm like, Tosh has lived a million lives. She has like
It feels
all
like
these
it.
eras of her life, and each one has its own unique like layers and parts. And I want to pull it all apart and talk about it because, like I told her, she has done an incredible job of documenting her life. And her response takes us right into the topic of the show, Healing Forward. Why is it that you have documented your life the way you have, Tosh?
Yeah, it was when you said that I said, well, that's a girl that grew up with no pictures, no memories of herself. And so it was a way of me kind of taking that back and kind of controlling that. When you talk about, you just said like I've lived a million lives and like each one is its own era. Like I think about my children actually, and their names kind of represent those different times in our lives. In the Bible, it talks about how people would name their children based on kind of what was going on. Like it was almost like you
Mm,
would get a name as a pillar of what was happening, right? So when Israel's name turned to Jacob, you know, all of those things. And so when I think about my kids, I think about how they are named after the different seasons of our life. So Wisdom came first, and it was everything up to that point that got us there. And
mhm.
then courage came after a really scary time in our lives, a very scary season of life. And then glory. And I feel like we're kind of in that season of
Glory
glory where
season.
God, yeah. So yeah, I agree with that so much.
And I mentioned that in the intro as I was pulling it all together. I'm like, her whole life can be summed up by her children's names. So I have to ask, like, what inspired the names? Because the names technically kind of came before all the
All
things.
the stuff. Yeah, Holy Spirit. When I became pregnant with Wisdom, it was really important to me that I had a girl. Like it was so important to me because I grew up in foster care. So the day that I was born, I was placed in the system, Washington State, and I aged out of foster care. And so my mom was also given up when she was born. So you have two generations of young women on my family line who had been given away. And so for me, I really, really wanted to have a girl. And I remember I heard the name Wisdom, and I was like, oh, this makes sense for me. Like this feels like the right thing because the reason why I had made it so far, I felt like I had made it at the time. I was 30, 29 when I got pregnant. Um, and I was just thinking back over my life and I was thinking about the things that we had achieved and the things that we had discovered, even meeting my husband, who I met on MySpace before there was any dating apps, before there was any of that. Like,
Oh, wait, we gotta stop.
I
For
know.
those of you who are watching who don't know about MySpace was my jam. Okay, like
MySpace, baby. Let me tell you about MySpace. I couldn't get on Facebook
okay,
because I didn't go to a
a
college that had
college.
Facebook. Yeah. And so I could get on MySpace. And so I got on MySpace And Ike was, I don't know, like back in the day on Facebook, there used to be like featured accounts or people that they would
Yes.
spotlight. Well, on MySpace, Ike was a cool new person to me. I had been on MySpace for a day, and every time I would log in, his picture popped up. And so it was like a Friday that I joined MySpace. It's Monday, and every day of that weekend that I had logged into MySpace, his picture had popped up. And so I sent him a message, and he says it. He'll tell the story, and he'll say he was getting all kinds of messages from all kinds of people. And I had gone to his page, and he had all these Kanye West lyrics. And at the time, I was obsessed with Kanye, the old Kanye.
The old
college dropout
College
Kanye, late
dropout
registration. Yeah, that Kanye. I just loved him. And Ike in his prime kind of was a doppelganger for Kanye West.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I messaged him, and we started talking, and the rest is history. That was like 21 years ago. And it's so funny because everybody thought it was a bad idea. No one thought it was a good idea. He lived in Washington, or he lived in Virginia, and I lived here. I'd never even been to the East Coast before. And so you've got like two people before online dating who meet on the internet, who are like talking back and forth. The only real example we have of that is Black Planet or AOL chat rooms.
Oh, take us back, Tash. Did you
I
just
know,
say
I'm
Black
saying
Planet?
a Black Planet, bruh. Yeah, the first social media site. No, I'm serious. So
yes,
yeah,
the good old days.
and yeah, the good old days. And yeah, we met in person. So that was October 2005 is when we met on MySpace, and then we met in person January of 2006. And then I went to meet his family in April of 2006, and then he came back to Tacoma, Seattle in July of 2006. He proposed to me, and we were married the next year. And we've been married. This was our 17th year. So
wow.
Wild, right?
That is crazy.
Sorry about my notification. So I just when we got pregnant with Wisdom, or when we got pregnant, I just knew like Wisdom was the right word for her. It was the right name. Like when I looked back on my life, at that time I felt a deep connection to Esther, and it was just kind of like God gave Esther wisdom so that she could free her people. And so that was her name. And then when we found out she was a girl, that sealed the deal. And so that's where she got her name. And then fast forward a couple years, I was in heart failure in 2017. I almost died. It was very, very scary. And one of the diagnoses of that was that I would never be able to have any more children. And so the doctor said that my heart wasn't ever going to be strong enough to support another life. And that was like super devastating for me, because at the time we only had Wisdom, and we had kind of like played around with this idea of maybe having children, but we weren't really sure because we were really successful entrepreneurs, and we didn't want to change that. We didn't want to mess that up. And so that was like the big delay on making decisions about having more children, among like some other things. And when I left that hospital and they were like, "You're done," I was devastated. It like crushed me. And at the time I was on this medicine that would terminate a pregnancy. And so there just was no hope of me ever having any more children. And so I spent that year after being sick, like just like praying and fasting and really like wrestling with the Lord about it, and doing everything that I could to get my heart strong enough to not have to take that medicine. And so the 1 year anniversary of that, I get echoes every year now to get my heart checked. And it was 2018, and I went in and they checked my heart. And when they looked at it, they were like, "When we see your heart, there's no sign that this happened." And they were like, it's like it never happened. Your heart looks like a normal heart. There are no scars on it, because normally when you go through heart failure, your heart leaves a scar. There's like a scar on it that shows that your heart had this trauma to it, but there was no indicator of that. And they were like, "If you want to have more children, we're clearing you to do that." And so I think it was like maybe that day or that week that we went home and we made it happen.
To make it work.
And we made it happen, and we got pregnant. And I remember texting the woman that I ended up choosing to be Courage's godmother and saying, "We're pregnant, and I want to name this baby Courage, because I feel like it took a lot of courage to believe that God would allow me to have another baby." And her actual name is Courage Kairos. And Kairos in the Greek means God's appointed time, because there's Chronos time. That's the time that we know,
that's the time we know.
that we function off of. And then there's Kairos time, and that's God's timing. And it has no actual time. It's because God knows it's appointed. And so her name is Courage Kairos Adore. And it just means like courage at the right time. And so that's how she got her name. And she is so much her name. They're all their names, actually. They like are the manifestation. And then our very last baby, we got pregnant with during actually George Floyd. Courage was 6 months old. There was a lot happening, and we were just like, I looked at Ike and I'm like, I could do this again. He was like, I could too. And it was like, okay, boom, here we go. And
oh my God, I love it.
That's kind of how, and thankfully God has been kind, because anytime that we have decided that we wanted to have children, he has blessed us like that, which I'm really thankful for. So we're in COVID, or we're not in COVID. Yeah, we're in COVID. We're in COVID. And it's like stressful because there's George Floyd. I'm in Seattle, where they're tearing and burning up the cities. And it just was she was the thing that kept me focused. I wasn't able to get lost in what was happening in the world, because I didn't want my baby to feel that. I didn't want her to feel like the stress of it all. And so I feel like Glory for me kept me from getting caught up and lost in just how tumultuous life had become. And we named her Glory. Her middle name is Aiti, which is a Taino word for Haiti. And so she was born on January 12th, 2021. And that also...
That's the day before my birthday.
Really?
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. So she was born January 12th. But what was so cool about it is we were we hadn't decided that was going to be her name. But when we met her, it felt like the right name. And then we gave her, we named her after Haiti, because during the time, there's so many stories in this one story. But between the heart failure and Glory being born, I also found out that I was Haitian. And so I had spent some time in Haiti in 2020. And I really had been adopted by so many people, and I learned so much about the culture, and I really felt it was so much a part of me. I wanted to be able to kind of pay homage to it. And so we named her Glory Aiti. And then when we brought her home, we realized that she was born on the anniversary of that big earthquake in 2010. And so she shares the birth date of like one of the biggest days in Haiti history and Haitian history. And so when I made her birth announcement, I was like, our world shook, because she came into this world. And there was like this beautiful, just like adoration towards Haiti and love for Haiti. And I named her prophetically, because I really believe that Haiti will be glorious again, and that it will turn around, and that it will have its day again. And so it was just kind of like a declaration for me naming her. Yeah.
Let's talk about Haiti, because you said prior to getting pregnant, and we got the pictures there. Y'all, Tosh just makes everything just look so amazing. Like how did that come about that you found?
First of all, we got to pause. I'm impressed that you really did some work on these slides. They are amazing. Oh my gosh. I need this whole presentation.
Look, it is a presentation. As I was doing it, I was like, I'm doing a whole PowerPoint here. But
this is like a presentation on my life. Like, I need this in an album, okay? I'm sorry. Okay, what was your question? I'm sorry.
Oh goodness. How did you even find out that you had Haitian heritage?
Yeah, that's a great question. So going back to my mom being given up, when I married Ike in 2007, that was the day that I met my maternal family. I had found them just a couple months before, and I was like, hey, I'm actually getting married in Myrtle Beach. If you guys can make it, we would love to have you. And they were like, well, that's incredible, because we have a family house just 30 minutes from there. Yeah, this is my very first picture with my family ever. Wow. That was the day I met them. So my family came to my wedding, and my mom looks very much like her family, but there's just a lot of questions around why my mom was separated and why she ended up not being raised with her family. And one of my big questions was the paternity of my mom and whether she shared the same father as the rest of my aunts and uncles. Yeah. And there's like a huge story behind that and why I could get into it, but we'll just save that for part 2 if you invite me back.
Hey, you know
Um,
it.
so I decided my uncle, when I had gotten sick in 2017, my uncle had put up some ancestry results that he gotten back on Facebook. And I was like, this is my moment to figure out my mom's paternity. And so I went and I got the test because I wanted to see how much of our DNA matched. So that
Match
was the whole reason why I took the DNA test, was just to confirm that my mom's brothers and sisters were
for
truly her
her
full-blooded
full brother.
brothers and sisters. Yeah.
Oh,
Because
wow.
we had asked my grandmother, like, why did you give my mom up? She went to her grave with that. She never would say. There were all kinds of reasons why that people had said. And honestly, the family that adopted my mom, they hid my family from me. I would ask them very explicitly, like, I don't look like any of you guys. Like, are y'all my real family? And that was always a question for me from birth because I grew up in a family that wasn't mine. So there was always a question around, well, who's my real cousin and who's my real aunt and uncle and who's because I was very aware that the people that I was calling grandmother, uncle, auntie, cousins were not my actual real cousins, right? So that was always a question for me. And that was always something that I was looking to answer. So when my uncle took this test, I took the test too, I got it back. I confirmed paternity. But I also, like when you take tests like this, I opened up a box of more questions. So I get my results back. And the first kind of red flag or yellow, beige flag, whatever, was like, I had 24% European ancestry. And so I'm seeing like Irish, Scottish, French, Portuguese, Spanish, um, all of these different things that I'm like, wait, what is this? Where's this coming from? And I'm comparing my results to my uncle's, and it's not coming up on his. So, I mean, he has a little bit of Irish and Scottish, but these other things that are coming up, this French and this English and this Portuguese and this Spanish, is not showing up on his side. And seeing that kind of helps. It answered some questions for me, because while I look like my family, there are some like differences. And so I'm like, okay, I never thought about it again. I just was like, oh, this is cool. Like, whatever. My uncle was like, look, you're a beautiful ring. We just moved on. I didn't think about it again. Right. It's just like, whatever. So, and then the second kind of thing was like everybody that I matched with on, because when you take these tests, it will show your DNA results, but then it will also say like, here are your family members who have also taken the test. And you'll see like third cousins, fourth cousins, fifth cousins, sixth cousins. If you're lucky, you'll get a third cousin, a second cousin, a first cousin pop up. But generally it's pretty distant. And so I'm seeing all these people who don't look nothing like me. They looking like Sarah and Karen and Becky. And I'm like,
who are these people?
That's interesting. Okay. And I just, but then I didn't think much of it. There were people too who had a lot of French last names. But again, it just never processed for me. I never even thought about it. So fast forward 2 years, I had just given birth to Courage, and a woman reaches out to me and she's like, hey girl, I just discovered that we're cousins, but this is strange for me because we've been told our whole lives that we don't have family in the United States. And she was like, would you be willing to get on the phone and talk to me? And I just had my baby and just come out of like a near-death experience. So I was a lot more open than I probably would have been a couple years previously. And so I was like, look, I don't have any answers for you. I was raised in foster care, but I'm happy to get on a call and just like talk through whatever. Because I mean, what do I have got to lose, right? So I get on this call with this woman probably a few hours later. And she's like, I'm Haitian. I'm first generation Haitian. I'm the only one of my siblings that was born in the United States. We're third cousins. Like, tell me what you know. And I'm like, Haitian?
Oh,
What are you talking about? Yeah. So that started like this long journey of trying to figure things out. Okay, well, this is clearly not my mom's side. This is clearly my dad's side. I'm just trying to put the pieces and stuff together. Yeah, and one of the only things that I've ever had, of, like, my dad, or just, like, the only information I had about my father, my mom on a little piece of paper, and I actually carry it around with me in my wallet. It says Stanley, his last name, and then it says the year that she met him, or the year that she got pregnant, where he's from, and US Army. That's it. That's all I've had for at this point of time. I think I was 38 at the time when she reached out to me. So as I'm like looking at this piece of paper and putting all these things together, I'm realizing that my mom wrote this man's name down, but she didn't write down the French version of it. So all this time we've been looking for this person, not looking for them, but thinking that this
Thinking
person's name
about
was
him.
this, and it's
Hmm.
something totally different. So that started like my journey of like, okay, well maybe I can find my dad. Like I found a cousin, like I'm not looking, but like let's see what happens. So in the midst of like trying to find my dad, I found a lot of third cousins. And one of the third cousins, the woman who I talked to on the phone invited me down to spend the weekend with her. She taught me everything there was to know about what it means to be Haitian. So I call it like Haitian boot camp. A couple months after meeting her, I went through Haitian boot camp. They taught me all the Haitian phrases. They taught me all the Haitian dishes, like family recipes from her family. They just taught me everything about the flag, everything about the history. Like it was like going to Haitian school. And when I left that weekend, I felt really rooted in what I had missed all those years. And so fast forward a couple months later, there were three cousins who have been like instrumental in kind of bringing me into my culture. And one of them invited me to Haiti. And so in 2020, I went to Haiti. I was there for like 3 or 4 days. And when I was there, I felt the energy in my body. Like I felt like I was home.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
It
Goodness.
made so much about me make sense. Seeing the people, being around them, eating the food, like I just was like, this just makes sense. And so I just continued on the journey of just trying to understand who I was. I started following Haitian bloggers. I started listening to compa. I went to Paris a couple times. I have a friend that lives there, and I just started like immersing myself into culture. And this was 2022. I had just turned 40. And my cousin who invited me to Haiti was like, you really need to take 23andMe. And I had been like up and down and back and forth and feeling like we had closed in on things and then taken 18,000 steps backwards. And I honestly was just kind of exhausted by the whole process of trying to find my dad. I had essentially given up. I just kind of was like, finding out that I'm Haitian is like more than I ever would have thought. I've got all of these beautiful like relationships and friends, and I'm a part of like these social media communities. And I just felt like I was already winning. Like my
Right.
family was pouring into organizations. I was sitting on a board of director. Like I had gone all in. And so I felt like I was Haitian. I didn't feel like I
Nothing
needed to
was
know who
missing.
my dad was. Yeah, I didn't feel like
Right.
anything was missing.
Right.
And I had spent all of this time like without him, 42 years or 40 years. Like I was just like, whatever. And so she just kept hounding me about taking 23andMe because there were like a lot of Haitians that were on 23andMe that weren't on Ancestry. She's like, I just have a feeling that you might find something if you take it. So begrudgingly, I took the test in August of 2022.
22.
And yeah, 3 weeks later, I got the test back. I matched with the first cousin, and 24 hours later, I was on the phone with my dad. A week after that, I was in Virginia with him taking a paternity test. And then the last basically year and a half of my life has been meeting family, meeting my sisters, meeting extended family, like really cementing myself into my family, like understanding my role, teaching it's just been kind of a whirlwind actually of life. So that's the story. That's what
Oh,
happened.
gosh. We're going to have to unpack some of that because, first
Let's
of
do
all,
it.
you are the epitome of adventurous. Like, I live vicariously through you. You got on a flight and went to Haiti.
I
Like,
did. And yeah, and it was really scary because
Talk
not
about
scary
it.
because it was scary because everyone thought it was a bad idea.
Yes.
And
Okay. I'm not the only one that was like, eh?
yeah. Everybody thought it was a bad idea and everybody was trying to talk me out of it. But there was something inside of me that was like, you're going to be okay. Like, do it. And so it was really hard to make a decision that I felt was best for myself that almost no one supported except for Ike. And Ike knows who he married. And
Mhm.
so he's pretty like, he trusts me and I trust God. And I just didn't have anything inside of me that was like, this is a bad idea. Like,
Bad idea.
this is, don't do this. And so
Mhm.
I did go and I was terrified and I went by myself. And I went by myself to meet someone that I had never met before. So I mean, everything could have gone south in a
Red
country
flag,
that
red flag, red
yeah,
flag.
there were so many red flags, so many red flags. It was a really probably not one of my best ideas, but I have absolutely no regrets about it because
Man.
I went to Haiti and when I came home the next week, the United States shut down and
That's
COVID happened and then Haiti progressively fell apart after that. And since then, I mean, they're in martial law right now. And there is no I mean, there are parts of Haiti that you can go to. So I mean, United States will tell you that Haiti is a mess. And Port-au-Prince absolutely is. But a lot of people do still go to Haiti and they go to the north, Cap Haitian. But I don't know that I don't know that I would go now just because things are just in unrest. And so I had this small little window of time where I trusted myself to do something that I'd really wanted to do. And I did it. And I have no regrets. And now I'm one of those Haitian Americans that have actually been to Haiti. Like my own family, who is like legit Haitian, like some of them have never
never
been to
been.
Haiti. Yeah. And I have. And so it's really, my dad's always like, I haven't been to Haiti since we left when I was 9 years old. And you've been there. And he's just like, dang, girl. So
Have any of your siblings ever been? So
they've not been. Mm-mm.
Tosh, that is just like a highlight of I think your life. Like you have just that ability to know when to hold them, know when to fold them. Like you trust you so much that I mean it's incredible. Like it all works out.
It
Like
does
it
work
just
out. It's when I don't
I'm
trust myself that I find myself in trouble. And I've seen that play out too, where I know something is not what I think it is, or when I know someone is not who I think they are, and I gaslight myself instead of believing that what I'm seeing is true. That's where I get hurt. That's where I get sliced up. But when I trust myself generally, when I trust like the knower in me, not the knower in me, not the knower that I made, but the Holy Spirit that's in me,
that's
I
in you.
generally do okay. I
Man,
generally make good decisions.
you are like I that is me. Like I get that on a deep level. It's the times when you say, okay, maybe you're right. I'm gonna and then you're like, oh my gosh, if I would have just listened to that inner, the Holy Spirit within me, because
Yeah.
each of us, I used to say this all the time that we all have our own internal compass. And I think as a parent, I see this more like I want to guide my daughter, but at the same time, I trust the God in her too, to where
Yeah.
even if it looks a little strange to me, I trust that, but for her. But sometimes I find I don't give myself that same grace that maybe I've been conditioned enough to where I don't. And she is like you, she is fearless. She's going to go after it. And I look at that sometimes and I'm like, man, I want to grab that. But you've maintained it somehow. And
I mean, I mean, for the most part, I think the things that you see are going to always be the things that look like I have, right? But there are things that I don't share where I
right.
haven't,
Oh, absolutely.
where I've betrayed myself because
Mhm.
I didn't listen to myself or didn't trust myself. But generally I'm a risk taker because I never want to look back and go, what could that have been or what would that have been if I would have just done it? I'd rather like fail forward, you know?
Man, oh, talk about it. And so you go over there, you get a chance to do something that even your own father hasn't been able to do since he was 9, or any of
Yeah.
your now new siblings. So
Yeah.
talk take us on to the journey of now reconnecting with your father. Like, and I
Yeah.
have to ask this cautiously because, we, of course, we see the highlight reel of people's lives, but the real is we are still human. We still have emotions. And as you candidly just shared, like there was a part of you that wasn't missing anything. So how was that transition? Like, you're telling it very fast, but in my mind, like, how do you emotionally get to that place where you're like, okay, like we're going all in? Like, how did you get yourself to that place to open up, to want to even embrace that side of yourself?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think my longing through life has always been for a mother. It was never for a father. So I think it was really easy to jump in because I never felt like anything was missing in respect to that. And I think part of that is because the woman who raised me in foster care, um, her husband passed away a month before I was born. So I didn't grow up in a home where there was a strong male figure. So that wasn't like something that I saw. So
Mhm.
it wasn't something that I missed. Um, I think when I think back to the beginning, when I first saw my dad, I was definitely apprehensive. I had a friend at the time who really encouraged me to just go all in. She was just like, I think it's less about you and more about what you're bringing into this situation. Like, I think it's less about how this is going to impact you and more about how God is using you in this situation. And I think her words are what flipped my heart. And it is even to this day, um, because it is complicated. Like I text somebody yesterday and I was like, nobody talks about what it's like to have the thing that you always dreamed of, but for it to look different from what you thought. And to deal with the grief that comes from that and to wrestle with that, like getting what we want sometimes isn't always ideal, or it isn't always the celebration or the feeling. I got my dad and I have him, and while there are like a lot of really beautiful things about that, it's been very complex and very difficult for me in a lot of ways. Having sisters after 40 years of not having sisters, and then being the firstborn and having to deal with what that's like when it changed everything for everyone. It wasn't
Right.
just me. Um, and it changed me completely. Um, there was so much that happened from meeting my dad. There were a lot of relationships that changed in my life. Uh, there was so much of me that changed, and I even to this day am working through this. Um, I have to relearn myself again. I have to get to know myself again because the person that I was doesn't exist anymore. Because that person didn't have a father. That person was an only child who grew up in foster care. Like that person was completely different from this person. And now that I know these things and have accepted them, I can't actually operate in that old
Oh,
wineskin. Like, it doesn't work. Like that's not who I am. So this journey that I've been on the last year and a half, and I'm very much in it right now still, is like, okay, who is this version of Tosh now? What's this era look like? Because now I'm a niece and I'm a first generation Caribbean woman. My dad is not a US citizen, he's an immigrant. When we're talking about policies right now where they're saying closing the borders and deporting people, that's a real issue that I didn't have before that now I have to consider and think about. I have family members who could be deported. Um, that's not something that I ever cared about and that ever mattered to me before. I now have sisters. I'm the oldest of five girls. I'm I'm a niece. I'm a niece to aunts and uncles who don't even some that don't speak English very well. That English is like their third language. Like it just changed everything. It changed everything for me. What has the journey been like? How was I able to open up? I think the reason I was is because that friend planted that seed, and I've never made it about me exclusively. I've always been like, "Okay, God, you are so intentional. You are so specific about how you do things. You are you are a clear God, but you're not direct. He's very clear about the things that he does, but he's not direct, right? So, and when I say that, I was talking to someone about this recently. I'm like, God is very clear when he gives instruction, but he's not direct about how he's going to make something happen. And so, I just think that God, when I look at it and when I look at my life and I look at everything that led up to this moment, it's very clear to me that it wasn't just about me, and that it was about all of the people who are connected to this particular situation, this particular reconciliation. And so I put my focus on that. And that is how I navigate this. I don't think it's by chance that God waited until I turned 40 to bring, like, 40 is significant to God. It means something to God. And I spent a lot of time researching that. Why is 40 so important to God? What other people, like, what other things happen in the Bible around this 40-year cycle, or this number 40? Like, what does this mean to God? Because I wanted to understand it. I wanted to understand, like, why at this time.
Right.
And a lot of times when 40 days are complete, there's something new that's happening. There's like a completion. There's a something that God is doing new. And so I've used that to guide me through the really hard moments, the really tough moments. Um, that God is not only doing something new in me, but he's doing something new in the people around me. And it required me in order for it to happen. And I've seen it. And so that is what has helped me make it make sense, or be a little more gracious in the moments that are hard. And there have been a lot of hard moments, I'm not gonna lie. But
I can't even
yeah.
imagine. And it kind of, you meant, we talked about heart posture a little bit earlier, but I
Mhm.
think that is so key in all of the eras of Tosh. Like, you have a heart posture to give grace. And as you were talking though, you were saying that you realized it wasn't really about you. I just thought about glory. Like, her name, this era is giving God glory. Like, in
Absolutely.
every piece of this era that you're in, he is being glorified in the reconciliation, in the reconnecting, in the healing forward. And so when I asked you to be a guest, of course, the title of this episode is Healing Forward. And of course, like you said, we see the highlight reel. It's some real things that are going on behind the scenes, of course, but you have always done a beautiful job of putting your best foot forward and healing forward. Like, we got to go back a little bit because we didn't go too deep into your childhood. You mentioned about not having photographs. What was your childhood like? What was little girl Tosh like?
She was lonely. And it's interesting because maybe like a month ago, I realized that some of the same feelings that I felt then, I feel now. And it took me, ooh, and I don't want to cry this makeup off because I'm gonna try to go to church after this.
It's,
But
it's all
I
right.
remember one day like sitting down and just being like, gosh, I feel like how I felt then, but
Mm,
now. I just felt lonely. I felt like I didn't really fit anywhere. I felt like I didn't belong anywhere. Um, and I just kind of felt overlooked a lot of my life. I felt like I had to be good. And I think, like most kids who grow up in foster care, feel that way. And so I spent a lot of my life being good at everything that I did, being trying, not being the best, but just being the best that I
it's the
could be,
best you could
because
be.
that's when people paid attention, and I think it's dangerous because I learned how to perform very early on. Not perform in terms of like song and dance perform, like but how to win people over, how to woo people over, how to get people to like me. And that was really important to me. And so I feel like I spent a lot of my childhood kind of figuring out how to navigate spaces where I could belong somewhere. Um, and yeah, and I think I spent a lot of my adult life doing that too. And because it was just learned behavior. And so
Right.
I think back over, and this is my first time actually saying this out loud, but I can look back over just the last couple decades and see the different circles or the different eras of me where I'm just trying to find a place to fit.
To feel.
And yeah, So that was my childhood, being very, very aware that while I was in this family that I was being raised in, that I wasn't, I never assimilated. I didn't really belong. It's like, you're here, and since you're here, we gonna let you eat, but just know, like, this meal is for this family. We're just being nice to you. That's kind of how it felt growing up. The woman who raised me was wonderful to me. She was tough. And I think growing up, I really I hated it there. I hated being there. I wanted to be rescued. Um, I just felt, again, I felt lonely. I felt overlooked. She had raised 9 kids, and when I was born, she was 51 years old. And so I think she was done. She was done raising kids. Like, that wasn't a part of her plan. And the only reason why she kept me was because when my mom got pregnant, my mom lived in that house before I was born, because the woman who raised me, she had an adult group home for women that had disabilities. So there were a bunch of women living there who, like, some had Down syndrome, some dealt with epilepsy. Some of them were just like cognitively slow. That's My mom is cognitively slow. And she's always been that way. And so when she got pregnant with me, my mom was living there. And her husband was like, don't force Anne to get rid of this baby, because this may be the baby that brings you water on your deathbed. And he was like, just let her keep the baby. Because my grandma was like, nah, I'm not having no kids in this house. Like, that's against the rules. She's going to kick my mom out. And she's like, this is just not what we do. And she's a hard woman. She's a very tough woman. And what ended up happening is I was born, and then the next month, her husband ended up passing away. He had a heart attack in a bank in downtown Tacoma. And I didn't know this story until she passed away. She died in 2009. I was 20. I had just married Ike, so maybe 25, 26 years old. And they told me while we were planning her funeral that the reason why she kept me was because she promised him that she wouldn't let me go. And so it was her way of, like, keeping a promise to him. And what's interesting, they shared this story with me, her sons and daughters, because when she passed away, I was the first person that they called. Is grandma with you? Because I was the only grandchild that had a key to the house. I was the one that had, like, taken care of her. I had grown to really love and respect her. And I understood, like, she raised me the best she knew how to raise me with what she had. She left home when she was 13. She had gotten pregnant when she was really young. She had a middle school education. She was a hardworking woman from the South who was doing the best that she could. And as I had grown, I just realized, like, this woman really raised me and didn't have to. Like, she really, like, took and she raised me to be tough, and she raised me to be smart. And it wasn't that she was, like, pouring into me or helping me with my homework or anything like that. It was her example. It was me watching her, watching how she moved through life, watching how she did things. And I don't know that she was, like, a woman of faith. I never saw her go to church when I was, but there was something in her that I picked up. And so I remember watching her. We would go garage selling and we would thrift, and then she would come home and she would flip those clothes, or she would clean up whatever, and then she would resell it in her own garage sale. And it took me a couple years to realize, oh, this entrepreneurial spirit that I have, I learned watching her. Yeah. Or, like, just this toughness, this thing that I have in me. I watched her do it. That was my example. I watched this woman. She owned many properties all over the city, and she hustled. I watched her hustle to keep them and to maintain. No man, supporting her. She did it on her own. And so while she didn't pass it on to me, like, the example of what I saw was what was put in me. And so that is the story of Doretha Spice. And so growing up, I didn't get, like, the nurturing and the love and the things like that, but I got the life skills. I got the things that I needed to learn how to survive. And that was the best. That's what she got. That's what she learned. She didn't have the nurturing either. And so now, as I'm raising my kids, I'm like, you generally can't give what you didn't get. You don't know how to. And so a lot of my journey has been around, okay, I didn't get this, but I'm not starving my kids. So what do I have to do to make sure that I can give it to them? And so a lot of my mothering and my parenting has really been about going deep into like the pain and going, dang, these kids, I will be in the middle of doing something for my kids and will hit me that I didn't have that. And it will hurt in the moment, but I will not pull back. I will lean in even more. And when I'm loving on them, I try to love on myself at the same time. So a lot of times what you're seeing with me, like when I took the kids to Disneyland for the first time, it was very much a trip for them, but baby, it was a trip for me too. Like, you know what I mean? I'm like, but the 8-year-old
Come
version of me is
on.
also going to Disneyland. And so we gonna do all the things. And my kids get so annoyed with me because I'm like, I never want to go to bed. We gonna buy all this stuff. I'm like, you guys don't want to go on another ride? They're like, Mommy, we're tired. I'm like, I'm not trying to hear none of that. We
We're gonna
about
do
to be
it
in this.
all.
And I allow myself to do that. I allow myself to put on
Yes.
the Mickey Mouse ears and to buy the shirts and to be ridiculous because as much as it's for them, it's for me too. And I allow myself to be in it with them and to experience it
That's,
for the first time with them and to do all those things. Like, and I
yes.
think it has made our family dynamic so fun
Mm-hmm.
because I'll be like, Wisdom, you want to watch TV tonight? And she'll be like, yeah. And I'll be like, you want to go to the gas station and get some snacks? And we will get in the car and go buy like $20 worth of bass. I'm her mom. Like, I'm not supposed to be, but I'm like, you know what? That's what I didn't have that. I missed
Right.
that. And so
Right.
I'm going to enjoy it while I'm giving it to her at the same time.
Absolutely. And I think
So
that's so God that he would allow, it's like you said earlier, like we don't know how God is going to work out the things always because he's intentional, but he's not always direct, is the way you said it. And as you were talking, I was just thinking about how, he is a redeemer of time. And it doesn't have to look like how we think, like you said. And I was prior to getting on the call, I was listening to Lisa Page Brooks, that viral video that she's got where she's like, the devil is a liar.
yeah.
And just come on now. We all know it. But I've always been one to be, I love the backstory because while everyone gets excited about the success, like I've always been that person, like, but what's behind that? Because I think I can learn more from that than what everybody's getting all excited about. And so she was talking about her story, and that just reminded me as you were talking, like, we don't know how God is going to redeem the time, but he is a redeemer, and he's a
Amen.
redeemer of time, and he can give back, as they say, what the cankerworm stole. And it doesn't have to look like how you envisioned it. And sometimes that's the hard part. And I think you said that too earlier. It may not look like you having that nurturing as little Tosh, but big Tosh can bring little Tosh along with her as y'all go on these adventures. And so that kind of answered my next question as you were talking, how it has impacted your mothering. You
Yeah.
shared, like, it allows, and that's another thing, allowing. That's a part of the healing forward, allowing those moments, like you said, to be there, to let little Tosh be there. And I think that's something that, as I have dove into this world of therapy and healing and going to therapy, and you're learning that it's okay to allow that person to be there because
Yeah.
she's still there, whether we
Yeah.
want to admit it or not. And that grace that you're showing to the people that you're allowing to have healing through you just being open hearted to allow this season of life, you're allowing their little persons to show up as well and be
Yeah.
healed. And so, and that takes me to the other scripture, all things work to the good of them that love the Lord and are called according to his
Amen.
purpose and plan. And that is so much your life, like all the pieces, all the eras. I'm gonna start saying that, the eras of
All that.
Tosh. This is
Taylor
my
Swift.
favorite era. Yes, come on. This is my era. And that made, when you said that, that made me think of that video you posted in your stories about age and how we can, have this idea of what we think that our life is going to look like. That's also a part of that healing forward, because talk about 40-year-old Tosh, because she is, what, how did the kids say it? She's a baddie.
Well, first of all, let me backtrack. I believe so much in therapy. I have been in therapy since January of 2023. I am I'm just like, if there is somebody that is like on the fence about therapy, if they're not sure, like I cannot, especially like being African American, I know it's like a thing that we just will not do or we feel like we can't do. I cannot say it enough. Like, get yourself a therapist. It is a gift to have a therapist. You don't even have to have a therapist because something's going wrong.
Right.
I tell my therapist all the time, I'm like, I'm so thankful for her because she exists just to be a place for me to have to go to talk. And
Yes.
everyone deserves to have someone who their job is to listen. She just sits and listens to me. And I can say whatever I need to say to her. And it was the kindest thing that I could have done to myself because
Yes.
girlfriends are wonderful and husbands and all the things. But like someone whose job is just to listen and to receive you is just so kind.
Yes.
So therapy, yes, please treat yourself, self-care. And then
Yes.
I went a step further and got an attachment coach. And I
Ooh,
started
talk
to
about this.
explore my attachment style. And I have an anxious attachment style because of how I grew up. And so the whole goal in life is to get to secure attachment. And secure attachment is like being okay, like with who you are, not being codependent, not being triggered by rejection, not allowing loneliness to overtake you, because those kinds of behaviors are what put us in kind of just toxic relationships, toxic friendships, things like that. And so I learned my attachment style, which generally kids who have been abandoned or orphaned or in foster care, they generally have like an anxious attachment. And I find myself often in codependent relationships. And so I learned about that. And I learned about why I end up in those places and what things need to be in place so that I make sure I don't find myself in those places. And I work with an attachment coach too. And I'm working on trying to be as secure as possible. And that's been helpful for me because I didn't even know that was a thing, number one. But number two,
Oh,
as I'm
just
raising my yeah, but as I'm raising my kids, it helps me think about, oh, I need to make sure also that they are securely attached, like they know who they are. And it's in small things. An example of this is when your kid comes to you and they ask you for something and you're like, give me a second. And then you don't actually do the thing. Like time passes and you move on. What you're doing is teaching your kid that when they come to you, they can't count on you. And then if they can't count on you to do the small things, then they're not going to count on other people. And you start to like see these different patterns that have been set up in us, like different agreements that we've made with ourselves that were made back in childhood that we have to like unlearn. And so it's been really helpful for me, and it's helped me to be way more intentional about my girls and just making sure that I am doing the things that build confidence in them and trust with me and trust with themselves. And that has to be modeled out. But I keep a picture of little Tosh
look at
in my
look, I didn't see that picture.
Mhm. And I keep
Oh,
her right here. I see her every single day. And my therapist is the one that told me to do this. She was like, let little Tosh be in your space. Let her see you.
yes.
She also encouraged me to put pictures of my family up everywhere. And so in
Yes.
my office, there are pictures of like me with my dad and me with my mom and my grandmothers, all three of them, the one that raised me in foster care, my dad's mom, my mom's mom, and just all of these family members around, so that when that voice that says you grew up in foster care, you don't have family, you don't know who you are, like I can be like, actually, that's not the truth, that's not the story, right? Like the story changes and we have to talk about the story differently. And so it's my way of reminding myself that like, yes, that was true, but that is not the truth anymore. And sometimes like I'm not strong enough to say the truth of now because
Right.
I'm so used to the truth of the past. And that's actually way more comfortable than having to embrace like this new
It's
thing.
new. Yeah.
So,
I
yeah.
love that. I love that. When you were saying that about putting those reminders up, it reminded me of a little bit of our conversation before the show started about those tabs. Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
want to be so independent, but the reality is we need these reminders. And
Yeah.
if you don't have these tools, if you don't go to a therapist, I'm grateful for conversations like this that are going to make light bulbs go off in the people that are watching, that will hear something that they're doing, that they can potentially start moving in that direction. And that is the entire purpose of this podcast, to be an example, to
Yeah.
provide people with an opportunity to heal forward, to have the audacity to heal. It takes audacity. Tosh, you have audacity. We see you, girl, in every era of all the Tosh, because as you're unpacking this and you do it in like, y'all, I'm not even showing all the pictures that all my presentation, like she said, because she presents it in such an incredible way. But the reality is, she's a work in progress. And I love that about you, that you have always been vocal about the fact that, hey, I can dress it up, but I want you to know that there's some things that are happening, and this is real life. Like when my kids are screaming, when we're having things going on, you are always intentional about sharing the real, because we need the real. We have
Yeah.
reels and we're all addicted to them. And they, as we were talking about, it makes sometimes life a little harder because you're like, man, they really got it together. And so I just always want to be a voice. I want to provide people with other voices to see that there you are right there. Something Tasha said is you. You have the ability to grab hold of your life story, and God is always right there with you. He's,
Yeah.
if you allow him to. Um, it was something else that I wanted to touch on. We've talked about
You were
the
talking about the 40-year-old version of me,
40-year-old
and
version of you.
yeah, off of that,
Become
yeah, I
butterfly, because Tosh, as I'm going, I'm like, Tosh is like had some eras, like the whole, after you had the heart failure, you had the like
short
shortcut, like,
hair, yep, and
come
before that had the
on.
afro.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? This is my favorite version of myself because this is the version where I'm actually doing the work, number 1. But number 2, I just feel like I feel a lot of freedom. I feel a lot of I feel a lot of freedom, and I also feel like this is the season of my life where I'm allowing the mask to come off. And wait, what is that? What was that?
That was a comment. Let's
That
see.
was a comment? Oh my goodness.
Look there.
Oh my gosh, not a comment. Come
Come
on. People
on,
are
comment.
here.
They are.
Um
We've been in our own world. We haven't even been paying attention to the comments. Y'all, thank y'all. We're gonna shout y'all out in a little bit, but she's in a good rhythm. I want her to keep flowing.
No, but it's also the season of life where I'm allowing people to help me.
Ooh,
And
talk about that.
that's been huge. Like I am allowing myself to be vulnerable and to let my slip hang enough that people are like, "Hey girl, your slip's hanging, let me help you." So this version of me, this style, this whatever was a person who saw me that was like, "Look, girl, um you not showing up the way that I see you in my head. Like there's a version of you that I see that I want the world to see. Like let me help you." And I was like, "Huh." But then I was like, "Okay. Okay." And so I let her help me, Jaleesa, who is now like she's like a little sister now, but at the time she was just a friend on the internet who loves clothes and loves to style, and she reached out and asked if she could style me, and I was like, yeah, let's see what you can do. And the relationship grew, and it was really amazing. Like she's been a huge part of like this evolution for me because she helped bring the person that I've always seen in my head to
Ooh.
life. So there's a version of ourselves that we see, right? That we feel like we're never going to get to. We all have that version of ourselves that if we were brave enough and courageous enough to stop listening to ourselves and step out person. And then we've got this version of ourselves that everyone has kind of told us we are, and we just kind of sit there because it's safe. And it's the person that we come to know, and it's the person that people accept. Um, and I feel like I was living in that place, but I saw this version of myself that I wanted to be. I just didn't know how to get to it. And Jaleesa came in and she helped like give me the confidence to pull that version out. And so it's been really fun. And so that was like kind of my first, I guess my first like tiptoeing into allowing someone to help me. And then over time, I've just seen that, like, well, this person has mentioned this thing to me. Maybe I should go to them and let them blah, blah, blah. So now I have mentorship and have like women who are older than me who are speaking into my life that are helping to guide me. I have people who are stepping in and they're being mentors to wisdom. And I feel like in this era of life, I'm learning like it's really about community. It's really about sisterhood. It's really about allowing people to be strengths in an area where you're weak, and vice versa. And it's not about putting on this mask and feeling like you've got it all together. It's actually in our vulnerability and our honesty that we, one, get the help that we need, and two, we're our strongest. And so I feel like that's been really big. And the other big thing, and this is something I've been working on behind the scenes, but I really feel like I'm really understanding who I am, and I have found confidence in myself. And I had mentioned a couple, maybe a few minutes ago, or a little while ago, about how I realized, even in finding my family, that I was feeling like the little girl from when I was little. Like I was still feeling lonely, I was still feeling lost. And so that actually took me to this, because I was tired of feeling like it.
Yes.
And I learned so much about myself reading the Bible. And in the last year, God has really been working with me on identity and really being solid in who I am, without anyone, honestly. And
Titles.
so, yeah. So in the last year, I've learned what it means to like find a home in myself. I feel like I've spent the last 42 years looking for home in friendships and in my marriage and with my children and in my church and in my career path and in my gifts and talents, and all of them came up short. None of them made me feel like I belonged. And in the last year, as I've like really gotten to know God, and I've been a believer my almost my entire life, but as I've really like developed an intimacy with the Lord and just like really got to know him and know his character and learn his voice for myself, not from the pastors that I listen to or the devos that I read in the morning. He has shown me things about myself that I didn't know. And he has cemented me in a way that I've never been cemented before. Like I feel like I finally built my house, my identity on the rock. And I've gotten to this place where I love my children, I love my husband, I love my friends, I love the things that God has given me, but they are additions to my life. And I need to be okay with like enjoying them for who they are right now in the moment, but they do not belong to me. Um, they are not mine to own, and they do not make up who I am. I alone like need to be able to live in this body and be content and be confident and be secure as I am, because that is all that I have, that is all that I am, is myself. And so this last year like has really done that for me, and I think what people are seeing now in me is just this confidence that's rooted in the Lord and in my identity that is finally based in him, finally. And I'm still very much like learning and growing and trying to plant those roots deeper and deeper and deeper. And I have days where I have to yesterday was a day where I was feeling lonely again. And I had to go, girl, we've been through this. Like you already like, but it's real. Like I'm a
It's
human and I have
real.
to like remind myself. And I'm like, no, you are not lonely. Get in that word. Like, what does it say? What does it say? And I have to talk to myself. But that has been what the last year has been for me. It's just like redefining who I am, finding my identity, and putting my identity in the place where it needs to be put, and riding out at dawn on that and nothing else.
And
So
Tosh, and talk about something that you recently did that I did not include in my presentation, but you were recently baptized again after
yeah,
what? How old were you when you were first baptized?
19.
19,
Yeah,
22, and
I'm
recommit.
42.
Talk
Yeah.
about that. Like, what? Because there, like you said, you've been a believer. What did that journey? What was that like? What did that feel like? What led you to do that? make that
It's a
choice?
great question. So last year around this time, actually, I was really struggling emotionally and mentally. I had just so I had been through a year of like meeting family members and really just felt like I had been turned upside down. Like I had met my dad and my sisters and my cousins, and just it was more people in my life than I could even manage. And in the midst of that, I had also lost someone very, very close to me, a friendship. They're still alive, but the friendship fizzled and it really broke my heart. And on top of that, there was all this stuff happening in the world. And I just felt so heavy and so sad every single day. And I just couldn't make sense of any of it. And so, really, it was out of frustration that I just was like, everybody's saying this. Everyone is saying that we need to be doing this. Like, people are saying, like, what's happening in Gaza is blah, blah, blah. And other people are saying this. And I just was like, I need to know what God says about all of this, because I none of it makes sense to me, and people that I respect are on opposite ends of the spectrum, and I actually don't know. I don't know what God says about this stuff, and I was just frustrated and just needed some. So I picked up the Bible just out of pure irritation and annoyance, and um the more I read it, the more I fell in love with it. And uh as I was reading it, and I started reading this plan called the Bible Recap. And as I was like reading and getting to know the Word of God and God's character, everything that I knew about my faith didn't match up with what was in this book. And I just started realizing that I was like living off of borrowed faith. I was living off of sermons. I was living off of um, everybody else's interpretation of the word. And the more I read it, I was like, wait, I didn't know that this is what happened
This is what
between,
happened.
like, I just had all of these, I had all of these stories from the Bible, but I only had the story. I didn't have the background. I didn't have the context. I didn't know what had happened between this time and this time. I didn't have any of that. So I didn't know I was missing all of this stuff. And so I'm like, okay, well, if this is what happened before David, then, well, what happened before? Well, what was going on after? So it was just like, as I was reading, I was like, oh, that's why like, I
Makes
just realized how much I didn't know.
right.
And the more I got into the word, the less I started listening to sermons and stuff. And I wanted to meet God. I just wanted to meet God. And God started talking to me, and I started having these revelations. And then I would start to share like some of the things that God was sharing with me in my quiet time with him. And my friends were like, whoa, that's crazy. Like I would just come with like really deep theological things, and I'm shocked that this stuff is
Like,
coming out of me, because
where's this
I'm just
coming
like,
from?
where's this coming from? Like I'm not that girl. Like I'm just not
Not that
her.
deep.
No, I'm not. I mean, I'm a smart girl, but
Right.
I don't care about spiritual things. Like I never did. I was just kind of like, I remember when I met my cousin Noelle. She's the one that I matched with. She was reading the Bible at the time. And I was like, girl, why you read the Bible? She's like, I just love it so much. And like God, he's got such a character. She was just talking about, like, she's just like, he's so
Right.
funny, and and I'm like, you're crazy. Like I'm just like, this was last April. When was this? This was 2023. So this is March of 2023. And
Wow.
I'm like, I'm legit like making fun of her and just kind of like, girl, you're so corny, like basically. And but I bought a Bible after that. And then I would like kind of look at it every once in a while and open it up every once in a while. But it was last fall that really, like, God beckoned me, I guess is what I could call it. And so the more I read, the more I loved it, because I really love history, and I really love like knowing, like, naturally I love history and I love culture. And so
Mhm.
I was falling in love with those parts of the Bible. And then I would start sharing like some of the things that I was like realizing, or some of the connections that I made. And as I was sharing those things, people were like, whoa, that's deep. And then I got invited to this Song of Solomon class through a seminary, and I fell in love with it. And then I started doing this Gospel of the Luke class through the seminary. And then, girl, I just started putting myself in all these spaces to learn more. I just desired more. I
More.
just wanted it all the time. And I didn't want it surface level. I wanted it deep. I wanted to talk to like pastors, and I wanted to talk to people who like were spending a lot of time in the word, because I wanted to be challenged by it. Because as God was like, as I was reading it, it was just unveiling so much to me. And it was, I'd gone to this conference, and it was August 17th of this year, which was my anniversary. I was at this conference, and Jesus Image was there in upper room, and this guy had spoken. And at the end of the night, I just was like, God, I surrender. Like, I surrender my entire life to you. And I was just like, I have goals, and I have plans, and I have hopes for my future, but none of them mean anything to me anymore. And I literally was like, that night, I was like, whatever it is that you want to do with my platform, whatever it is you want to do with me, I am fully surrendered. I will abandon every dream that I have for the rest of my life to do whatever it is that you want me to do. But you just have to tell me what you want me to do. And so that night I left, and I came home, and I literally surrendered my life to the Lord. And a couple weeks later, my pastor called, and she's like, "Have you ever been baptized?" And I was like, "I have, but I've honestly been feeling like I need to be rebaptized." And she was just like, "Well, we're doing baptism Sunday on this date." And I'm like, "Dang, I'm traveling." She was like, "Well, what day in September are you here?" And I was like, "Well, I'll be here on the 29th. Well, actually, I'll be out of town, but I'll just be 5 hours away." She was like, "Well, leave wherever you're going to be and just drive straight to church. You don't have to have any makeup on or anything like that." She was like, "We're going to do baptism. We're going to change the date for you." And I was like, "Say less. I'm going to get baptized." And so I made the decision to get baptized. And then, as the 2 weeks between the time that I made that decision and the time that it actually happened, I saw why it was so important for me to recommit. And God just kind of started to reveal. So what's happening in my life right now is I'm saying yes, and then I'm getting the answers afterwards. One of the things that God really wrestled with me about that night that I surrendered to him, he had told me to host a Bible study. And I was like, I don't do this. This is not what I do.
Okay,
I
Moses.
No, I don't. This is not, I'm not that girl. Like, my own quiet time, that's one thing. But I'm not interested in being anybody's leader. I'm not interested in being anybody's, like, I'm not trying to do that. I'm not trying to disciple people. I'm not trying to do none of that. I'm not like, I'm just trying to, I'm trying to
it
get
for
right.
myself.
That's it. That's all I wanted. And girl, when I tell you, he would not let me rest. I was agitated. I could not get any peace. I would cry over this. Because I knew that God was saying, like, no, you need to step out. And
This is what
so
I've called you to do right now.
yeah, and I was just like, I don't want to do it. It seems really scary. And also, like, I also am friends with a lot of like worship leaders and ministers and pastors, and I look to them so much with so much respect and an honor of like how they commit their lives to this work. That ain't me. I'm a creative. I'm not trying to do that. Like, I have no interest in any of this. So funny. I know. And so it's so funny because along the way, God has sent people who have spoken words over me, or who have seen, like, a friend who was like, back in March, she goes, "Girl, I don't know why you care about influencing, because you about to be in ministry. Like, this ain't what you need to be doing anyway. Like, you don't need to care about whether your Tide ad gets likes." She was like, God is moving you in a different direction. And I'm like, "Girl, shut up." She's like, "I promise." She's like, "You're going to be in seminary." And I'm like, "I am not going to seminary. Girl, why am I applying to a certificate program at a seminary school?" So it's just so funny. Like, she's like, "You're going to be teaching Bible studies." This is back in March. I'm like, "I am not going to be teaching Bible studies. I'm not trying to do this." Yeah. And so long story short, I did get online, and I was like, "Yeah, if I did a Bible study, would anybody be interested?" God was like, "That's not what I told you to do." I finally announced the Bible study. I had like 75 women respond. And we did our first Bible study like 4 weeks ago. And on that first night that we did Bible study, I asked all the women, like, "What made you sign up?" And all of these women were like, "I had been praying to God for community. I had been asking God. I hadn't been in church since COVID. I knew something was, I mean, just people would text me and they'd be like, "Will you lead a Bible study?" And I'd be like, "No, but I have a friend who's doing it." And God was like, "That's not what I told you." Long story short, when I sat in that Bible study with those women and I found out why they signed up, I was like, I get it now. And so it was just like the moment to get baptized was really it just about being obedient, and also drawing the line in the sand around, like, this life is yours. Like, I have loved God and have walked with God, but I've never been surrendered to God. And this was my proclamation that, like, this life right here, this one is surrendered to God. And I needed my husband to see that. I needed my children to see that. And I needed my friends to see that. Friends who are walking with me now, and friends who walk with me from afar and think they know me but don't know me. And I'm sure there are some people that are still like, is this real? Is she for real? Like, that are questioning, and that's fine. But I needed that to happen. I needed it to happen. There was just so much that I didn't think I was a lukewarm Christian. Um, but I definitely was. I definitely was like 1 foot out, 1 foot in. And I wasn't doing anything wild and crazy, but I definitely was not yeah. I
Sold
just
out, as we
I
say.
wasn't I wasn't I thought I was, but I wasn't,
Talk
and
about it.
so those are the things. But I wouldn't know that if I wasn't reading this word and really understanding what it means to be consecrated to the Lord and what it means to be holy. And God is serious about that. And I
Yes, he
think that
is.
I was like, yeah, I mean, whatever. But
Look
now
at
it's like, nah, I'm not playing.
look. You were Noelle. Where's Noelle? We need to get
I
her.
know we actually, she's like, look at you now. And I'm like, I know, girl. What a
Just
shame.
in
She's
love with him. Just
just in
corny, like you
love.
said.
I'm so corny, bro. So corny. No, and
Love
so
it.
yeah, it just has been it's been such a blessing, and just important for me to know, like, yeah, this is what we're doing now. This is how we're moving. And it has informed so much. Yeah, I don't there I'm still so much in the middle of things. I'm
Mhm.
in the middle of figuring out who I am, what God is doing, what he wants from me, where I'm going. And I was listening to Jackie Hill Perry and Philip Mitchell, her podcast. She interviewed Philip Mitchell from 2819 Church, and he said, before God calls you to whatever it is that he's calling you to do, he'll call you to himself. He'll beckon you to himself. And I feel like God called me to himself. I feel like he chased me down and was like, come here, like, you're mine. And so I feel like we're in that phase of life where God has beckoned me to him so that he can enjoy me, so he can put the good things in me, so that he can send me out. And I don't know what he's gonna do. I don't know, like, what my next era is, but I know that it is solely going to be about doing the work of the Lord.
I love it. I love it.
So
As you were talking, I keep hearing it again. This is accountability too. As you were speaking, I'm like, and I told you this before we started, you can know the word, but unless you're in it, and I was just talking to my husband about this, faith comes by hearing. And we can think we know, but if you're not rehearsing it and you're not spending time in it, you will forget it. The Bible tells us to hide the word in our heart so that we can pull it out of us when we need it. But if you're
yeah.
not spending that consistent time in it, you'll forget it. I mean, there's no way you're going to remember everything, but you can at least be in it enough. But you were speaking, and I just kept hearing, they that hunger and thirst after righteousness. Like, that reading the word calls you to want more of it. You begin to hunger after it. And that's what he wants. He wants us to get to that place. I always laugh. Me and God have like a laughing relationship. I laugh at him. I'm like, God, really? That's the way you had to do it? Like, there was no other way. Okay, I hear you. But he wants us to hunger after him. He wants us to pursue him. But sometimes we're stubborn and he has to come after us. And he will leave the 99 to go get the one because he cares that much about us. And when you begin to spend time with him, you'll begin to understand who he is in a way that may seem corny to other people,
Mhm.
but it's like, it's so beautiful, it's so rich. And the time that you would think that you had lost by not having a father, he will mend, as he says in his word, he will cause all things to work together for the good of them that love him. And he looks for us to be weak in our weakness. Paul says in our weakness he is made strong, so he boasts in his weakness. Like,
Yeah.
and that's all I hear in everything that you're saying. Like, you're not perfect, and God loves that. Like, I could, as you said, we learn the stories, and so when I'm needing that, I'm like, man, Lord, Moses wasn't equipped either. He didn't want it, but you used him in such a mighty way. So Lord, if I can only just get to the place where I am having the audacity to surrender and
Yes.
say, I'm yours. Like, I don't have, and I just said this literally before we got here. I don't know what the next is, Lord. I'm just here to surrender and be in this present moment, to be whatever it is that you would have me be. If it's the Audacity to Heal podcast, Lord, I'm showing up as that. If it's
Amen.
showing up in church to be your praise and worship leader, I'm that. But ultimately, I'm yours. And
Yes.
he gets the glory in all parts of our story. I want to go back to that, because we can sometimes, in the midst of like healing forward, we're pulling all the pieces together, we can miss the significance of how he just so intricately weaves all the pieces together, and sometimes we'll want to leave that behind. And that's one thing I love about you, Tosh. You have done an amazing job of taking all your pieces with you. That's why you can sit there with that little Tosh and heal that little Tosh, because you didn't leave any pieces behind. I heard Dr. Anita Phillips talk about how we
I
have
love
to get
her.
comfortable with all parts of our story, like the
Yes.
hurtful parts, like joy and pain can coexist. And we have to take all that with us and know that God is going to help us carry that, because it's heavy. He doesn't want you to carry it alone, but take all the pieces. And that's where the beauty in this beautiful collage, as I have presented my presentation of Tasha's life, like, it is so beautiful knowing the backstory, because she's carried all these pieces and we're watching in real time God do the miraculous. Like, your story is yet to be told. And girl, you got a lot of pictures. I was going through them last night. Like, she got a story and he's still writing more. Like,
It's
I'm just,
wild.
it is incredible. And it is healing forward. Like, you are the definition in my mind, in my heart, of healing forward. Like, you didn't allow those things to stop you from moving forward. And even as God has given you these gifts, you're taking these gifts and you're moving forward, not only for you, not only for little Tosh, but also for your three daughters. Like, he gave you three uniquely named, perfectly named daughters that you get to be the example for. And so, look, I'm looking at the time, because I will sit here and hold you. And I know you still got to get to church. And I am so thankful for you being so gracious with your time. Um, just to wrap it up, I don't even know how. Like you said, it's going to have to be a part two. How, what do you want to say to our listeners about healing forward? What message is on your heart? It doesn't even have to be about healing forward. Like, what is just on your heart that you want to share with our audience right now? Because we also, I forgot the subtitle: Rediscovering, Restoring, and Reconnecting. Like, that's you. You're rediscovering. We're watching you emerge as this beautiful phoenix slash butterfly. Like, what words do you want to share with our
Yeah.
audience before we go?
I think in this last year of like reading the Bible and just looking, I think the reason why I've like so radically and quickly just been like, it's me and God, like this is what we about to do, is because as I was reading through the word, what I noticed, or one of the few themes that kept coming up for me, is like God is for redemption and he's for restoration. Like those are two things that we can see from the very beginning to the very end. Like that is what is important to God, is restoration and redemption. And when I looked at my story and I looked at my life, which I've spent a lot of time reflecting on my life over the last year, I can see so many places where God redeemed and restored and redeemed and restored and redeemed and restored. Um, and so that's a theme that I saw in the word of God, but also in my life. And so it was impossible for me to move forward and not make him. We talked about this recently. I'm like, he's my client. Like, of all the brands that I've worked for, this brand is the one that matters the most. And the reward of this work that I do with him, to talk about restoration and redemption, is going to be better than anything that I could do. So if I could leave anything with the audience, it would be whatever it is in your life that needs to be restored. Like God wants to do that. And there's a freedom that comes from that. There's a freedom and there's a confidence that comes from restoration and redemption, like redeeming your story, restoring it. And I think that we always feel like restoration or redemption means letting someone in our life that hurt us, or maybe, I don't know, going back to something. That doesn't mean that. It just means like dealing with it and allowing God to rewrite, like you said, redeeming the timeline or rewrite that story. I just think healing is so much more. There's a freedom that comes from doing the work of healing that you can't get any other way. And it's hard, tough work, but it's also liberating work. Like it allows you to stand on your own 2 feet. It allows you to anchor yourself into something that matters. So um if there's something that is on your heart to fix or to tend to, like, that would be my advice. I wish that I would have tended to myself earlier. I wonder, how much freedom I could have had earlier in life had I dealt with some things that I had been avoiding. Um, so if I could and also the idea of duality, um, of pain and joy, or sadness, and like we carry these 2 things forward, and I think that we have been taught that it can only be one or the other. And
Right.
and most of life is really just holding both in your hand,
Right.
and just moving forward and being like, dang, I'm really sad today, but also this is bringing me so much joy, and I'm going to be in this present moment, and I'm going
Yeah.
to enjoy this moment. And so I think that's what I would leave the audience with. Like, life is so beautiful because it is hard. And it's the hard times that help us to see the good times. It's the hard stuff that helps us to see how far we've come. It's the stuff that breaks our heart that um, help us to see the things that also mend it and
And,
bring joy to it. And so those are the things that I feel like I have learned in the last year. Like, all of it really truly does work together for our good, and it chisels something good out of us, and
yes.
it brings us full circle.
Mhm.
But you have to be willing to actually face it and to deal with it. And that's brave, brave work. So,
Yes, it is. It's
yeah.
courage.
Yeah.
Listen to all this wisdom. Look, I'm so corny. I could just
For
all
his
day long.
glory.
Man, that is just so, I mean, that is just sums it all up. Wisdom, courage, and glory. Like, as we wrap up my thoughts, and I have so many, my thoughts are racing because there's so much to Tosh. She is so many layers, and we have tapped in to so many parts of her story. We've tapped into so much of the present work that she is doing, and it's all beautiful. Like, I
Thank you.
just, when I think of your story, it's beauty for ashes. Like, we hear that, and sometimes we don't know. Do you have that somewhere? Oh, hello.
I
Look at
got this
the
tattoo in
sign.
2014. I had no idea. Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
Tosh.
Wild. Had no idea what was ahead.
Talk about it and what's yet to come.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, every step forward, we are taking all that with us and trusting and just yielding to ultimately God. And I'm just honored to know you. I'm honored to have had this time with you. Look, I'm looking over here because I have notes. I never look at notes, y'all, and I'm trying to do better. Sometimes I just have so much that I want to say, and I can write it down sometimes better than I can say. So I'm going to read this. I just want everyone to be reminded that healing is not just about what's behind you, but it's about boldly stepping into what's ahead. Tosh has been the example of that. Every step forward is victory, no matter how big or how small. So no matter where you are, take those baby steps, because like she said, healing is work. It's a constant work. I don't believe in or subscribe to this idea that we will ever stop like growing and healing. Like there's going to be something that you can always be healing. And so that's just being vulnerable enough to allow yourself to be pruned always, to keep growing, to be, a student of the word and of yourself. Be a student of yourself. We love self-help, but how many times have we looked in the mirror to get with ourselves? And that's another thing that I'm passionate about for this podcast. Be willing to get with yourself so that you can take those steps to heal and to be whole. God wants that for us. He wants us to be whole. He wants us to be all that he created us to be, but we've got to take and submit him the pieces.
Yeah.
All of it. And he can make all of it work together. And he's already making it. It's not like you have to sign up for him to do that. He's doing it anyway. Like he's going to make it come together. And that's the beautiful journey of walking with the Lord and trusting him every step of the way. That's the way he wants it. So I am just full, Tash. I love you. I love you for just being who you are. We see you, sister, in all the eras, and we are here for it all. I thank you for being here. I thank you for your community. Like, if you have never followed, Tash got a community, y'all. Her people ride with her.
They do.
Girl.
Y'all be having my back.
Cultivated that because of who you are. We want to see you win, and you are winning, and it is so beautiful to watch and see. Audacity to Heal audience, we thank you for tuning in tonight. Y'all, she already said part 2, and I'm gonna take her at it because we got it on.
Come on, let's go. Yep,
we're gonna have part 2 for healing forward or whatever else God wants her to talk about on this platform. She can have it. I have enjoyed myself. I pray that something was said that will touch your heart, that will help you to continue to heal forward, to have the audacity to heal. We love y'all. We thank y'all. And good night. Bye. Look, I don't even know how to end it. Here we go.
Thank you for tuning in today to the Audacity to Heal podcast. I hope this episode has inspired you and ignited something within you. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving us a rating or review on your favorite podcast platform. And if you know somebody who could truly benefit from hearing this episode, share it with them. Until next time, keep embracing your journey and remember, you have the audacity to heal.